The gilded cage, the crystal chandelier cast fractured light across the ballroom, each shard illuminating the cruel smiles of New York's elite. Elena Castellano stood at the edge of the crowd, her black dress chosen specifically to make her invisible, a skill she'd perfected over 3 years of marriage to Victor Castellano. "Elena, darling," the saccharine voice belonged to her sister-in-law Veronica, a woman whose entire personality seemed crafted from designer labels and venom. "I was just telling the Hamptons about your little hobby. What is it again?" "Reading romance novels." The circle of women tittered like expensive birds. Elena's cheeks burned, but she maintained her practiced smile. "I enjoy literature, yes." "How quaint." Veronica's eyes sparkled with malice. "Victor was just saying how he admires your dedication to comfort food. Very brave of you, really. Not everyone can pull off the before look so confidently." The group erupted in polite laughter that felt like glass shards against Elena's skin. She glanced across the ballroom toward her husband Victor, who was holding court with several business associates. His perfectly sculpted jaw was animated as he told some story, his hands gesturing with the confidence of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. As if sensing her gaze, Victor looked over. Their eyes met briefly, and she saw something flicker across his face, not affection, but assessment. He was evaluating her performance, checking to see if she was managing to not embarrass him too badly tonight. "Elena!" His voice boomed across the space between them. "Come here, sweetheart, I want you to meet someone." She navigated through the crowd, each step feeling heavier than the last. Victor's arms snaked around her waist, pulling her close, not in affection, but in control. "Gentlemen, my wife, Elena." "Elena, this is Richard Blackwood, from Blackwood Investments." Victor's grip tightened almost imperceptibly. "Richard was just asking about my secret to success. I was telling him about the importance of balance in one's life." Richard's gaze swept over Elena with the practiced assessment of a man who reduced everything to numbers. "Ah, yes, the importance of having someone to keep you grounded. Very wise, Victor." "Exactly," Victor agreed, his smile sharp as a blade. "Elena keeps me humble, don't you, darling? She reminds me daily that not everyone can maintain the discipline required for success." The words hit their mark perfectly. Elena felt something crack inside her chest, but her smile never wavered. "Of course, dear." "Speaking of discipline," Victor continued, his voice carrying just far enough for nearby conversations to pause, "Elena's been working with a nutritionist. Haven't you, sweetheart? Show them how committed you are. Skip dessert tonight." The suggestion hung in the air like smoke. Elena felt every eye in their vicinity turn toward her, waiting to see how she would respond to this public diminishment. Her husband had just told a room full of influential people that she lacked self-control, that she needed management, that she was a problem to be solved. In that moment, standing in a ballroom worth more than most people's houses, surrounded by the glittering armor of Manhattan's most powerful families, Elena Castellano made a decision that would change everything. She would never be invisible again. Shadows and secrets. 3 weeks after the charity gala, Elena sat across from Marcus Reeves in a dimly lit coffee shop in Brooklyn, a world away from her gilded Manhattan existence. Marcus was nothing like the polished predators in Victor's circle. His wire-rimmed glasses and rumpled sweater spoke of someone who valued substance over style. "Mrs. Castellano," Marcus began, his voice cautious, "what exactly are you asking me to do?" Elena had found Marcus through careful research, a former SEC investigator who'd left government service after blowing the whistle on corruption only to be blacklisted from major firms. He now ran a small practice specializing in forensic accounting for divorce cases and fraud investigations. "I need to understand my husband's business," Elena said quietly. "All of it. The parts he shows the board and the parts he doesn't. Marcus leaned back, studying her. That's dangerous territory. Victor Castellano isn't just wealthy, he's connected. People who cross him tend to find themselves facing audits, lawsuits, or worse. He's been crossing me for 3 years, Elena replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Every day, in small ways and large ones. I'm tired of being collateral damage in his ambition. Something in her tone must have convinced him, because Marcus nodded slowly. What do you know about his operations? More than he thinks. Elena pulled out a tablet, swiping to photos she'd secretly taken of documents from Victor's home office. He's been using shell companies to hide assets. There's money flowing through accounts in the Cayman Islands, payments to consultants that don't seem to exist, and acquisitions that happen just before companies mysteriously face regulatory problems. Marcus's eyebrows rose as he examined the images. This is substantial. How did you get access to these? He doesn't see me as a threat, Elena said simply. To Victor, I'm furniture that occasionally needs to be told to lose weight. He takes calls in front of me, leaves documents on his desk, discusses deals over dinner. He has no idea I'm listening. Over the next 2 hours, Marcus walked her through the labyrinth of Victor's empire. Castellano Holdings was built on leveraged debt, with Victor using his reputation and connections to secure loans that he then invested in increasingly risky ventures. His latest obsession was acquiring smaller tech companies, stripping their intellectual property, and then restructuring them into bankruptcy. There's a pattern here, Marcus explained, pointing to a series of transactions. He identifies companies with valuable patents or proprietary technology, then orchestrates a campaign to devalue them. Leaked negative reports, regulatory complaints, filed by anonymous sources, key employees poached right before major product launches. Elena felt a chill of recognition. James Chen, you know him, Pinnacle Dynamics. Victor's been talking about it for months. He says James is an idealistic fool who doesn't understand real business. She paused, remembering the contempt in her husband's voice. What's he planning to do? Marcus pulled up financial records on his laptop. Based on these patterns, I'd say Victor is orchestrating a hostile takeover. But first, he'll destroy the company's value. James Chen has been developing revolutionary battery technology, something that could disrupt entire industries. Victor wants that technology, but he wants it cheap. The scope of her husband's cruelty was breathtaking. Elena had assumed his malice was reserved for her, but she was just one casualty in a war Victor waged against anyone he perceived as weak or valuable. How do we stop him? She asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Information warfare requires perfect timing. We need to document everything, build an airtight case, and then deploy it when Victor is most vulnerable. When would that be? The Castellano Holdings annual shareholder meeting is in 6 months. It's when Victor is most exposed. Investors, board members, media all in one room. If we could present irrefutable evidence of fraud and market manipulation, at that moment, Marcus smiled grimly. The cascade effect would be immediate. Stock price collapse, SEC investigation, criminal charges. Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. But it was a cold, sharp hope, not the warm emotion of her youth, but something forged in the fires of humiliation and tempered by months of careful planning. What do I need to do? Keep being invisible, Marcus said. Keep listening, keep documenting. And Elena, he looked at her seriously. Once we start down this path, there's no going back. Victor won't just lose his fortune, he'll lose everything. His freedom, his reputation, his family legacy. Are you prepared for that? Elena thought of every public humiliation, every casual cruelty, every moment she'd been made to feel like her existence was a burden to be endured. He should have thought of that, she said quietly. before he declared war on me. Part 3. The underground, the warehouse gym smelled of sweat, determination, and dreams deferred. Elena stood in the doorway, her designer workout clothes marking her as an outsider among the serious athletes training in the fluorescent-lit space. She almost turned around 3 times before finally stepping inside. "You lost, princess." The voice belonged to a compact woman with graying temples and hands wrapped in tape. Rosa Martinez had been a professional boxer 20 years ago, before an injury ended her career. Now she trained fighters who couldn't afford the glossy gyms uptown. "I want to learn to fight," Elena said, her voice barely audible over the rhythmic pounding of heavy bags. Rosa looked her up and down, taking in Elena's soft edges and uncertain posture. Why? The question was simple, but the answer was complex. Elena thought of Victor's dismissive laughter, of Veronica's calculated cruelty, of 3 years spent shrinking herself to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. "Because I'm tired of losing," Elena said finally. Something shifted in Rosa's expression. She'd heard that tone before, the sound of someone who'd reached their breaking point and chosen to fight instead of break. "Training isn't therapy," Rosa warned. "I don't care about your feelings or your problems. I care about whether you'll show up every day and do the work. You think you're ready for that?" Elena nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety. "We'll see. First lesson's free. After that, it's 100 a week. Cash only. You train here 4 times a week minimum. You follow my rules, or you find another gym. Understood?" The first session was humbling. Elena could barely complete a single round of shadowboxing without gasping for air. Her form was terrible, her reflexes non-existent, but she showed up the next day, and the day after that. Rosa was a demanding teacher who accepted no excuses. "Your husband give you those soft hands?" she asked during Elena's second week, examining Elena's palms after a particularly brutal heavy bag session. "Among other things," Elena replied, wrapping ice around her knuckles. "Soft hands, soft mind," Rosa said bluntly. "You want to survive in the ring or anywhere else, you need to get hard. Mind, body, spirit, everything." Slowly, Elena's body began to change. Not just physically, though the pounds melted away and muscle appeared where there had been only softness. More importantly, her relationship with her own strength transformed. She learned that she could absorb punishment and keep moving forward. She discovered that her body was capable of things she'd never imagined. "Pain is information," Rosa taught her during a particularly brutal sparring session with another student. "It tells you what's happening, but it doesn't get to make decisions for you. You decide whether to quit or keep fighting." Elena chose to keep fighting. 3 months into her training, Rosa pulled her aside after a session. "You're different from when you started," she observed. Elena caught her reflection in the gym's mirrors. Her face was leaner, her shoulders broader, her eyes harder. "How so?" "When you first walked in here, you moved like someone who expected to be hit. Now you move like someone who'll hit back." The observation was more accurate than Rosa knew. Elena had been applying the lessons from the gym to the rest of her life. At home, she maintained her role as Victor's docile wife, but internally she was cataloguing every slight, every cruel comment, every casual dismissal. Marcus had taught her to think strategically. Rosa was teaching her to act decisively. "There's something else," Rosa continued. "You've got good instincts, natural timing. Ever think about competing?" Elena almost laughed. The idea of stepping into a ring in front of crowds, of voluntarily making herself the center of attention, seemed impossible for someone who'd spent years trying to disappear. "I don't think I'm the type," she said. Rosa fixed her with a steady, "Look, what type is that? The type who shows up every day and does the work? The type who takes hits and keeps standing? Because that's exactly what a fighter is." That night, Eleanor stood in her marble bathroom, examining herself in the full-length mirror. Her body was transforming into something she barely recognized. Lean, powerful, purposeful. But more than the physical changes, she saw something new in her eyes. For the first time in years, she looked like someone who wouldn't be underestimated. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Board meeting next week. Victor's presenting the Chen acquisition. Are you ready? Elena flexed her hands, feeling the calluses Rosa's training had given her. 6 months ago, those hands had trembled when she reached for a fork at dinner parties. Now they were weapons. She typed back, "Ready." The architect's blueprint, James Chen's office, was a study in controlled chaos. Whiteboards covered in equations, prototype batteries scattered across workbenches, and the lingering scent of industrial coffee that had been brewing too long. Elena sat across from him, having used a false name to secure the meeting. "Ms. Williams," James said, reviewing the business card she'd given him. "Your investment firm is interested in clean energy patents?" Elena nodded, her heart pounding. This was the most dangerous part of her plan, direct contact with one of Victor's targets. "We specialize in emerging technologies with disruptive potential. Your work with lithium-ion optimization has caught our attention." James's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of someone discussing their life's work. The breakthrough came from reconsidering the molecular structure of the cathode material. By creating a hybrid composition, we've achieved energy density improvements of nearly 40%, while reducing charge time by half. As he spoke, Elena felt a surge of anger at her husband's callousness. James Chen wasn't just a business target. He was a genuine innovator whose work could revolutionize renewable energy storage. Victor wanted to destroy him simply because he could. "That's remarkable," Elena said. "Have you considered partnership opportunities with larger firms?" James's expression darkened slightly. "We've had approaches, most recently from Castellano Holdings, but their terms were essentially a buyout disguised as partnership. They wanted controlling interest in exchange for funding that we frankly don't need." Elena leaned forward carefully. "What was your impression of Victor Castellano?" "Brilliant in a predatory way," James replied. "He made it clear that he viewed our refusal as temporary, said something about market conditions having a way of clarifying people's priorities. The threat was exactly what Marcus had predicted. Elena made her decision. "James, I need to tell you something, and you're going to find it hard to believe." She took a deep breath. "My real name is Elena Castellano. Victor is my husband, and he's planning to destroy your company." James stared at her, his expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally alarm. "I don't understand." Elena pulled out her tablet, showing him documents Marcus had helped her organize. "These are financial records showing a pattern of corporate sabotage. Victor identifies companies like yours, then systematically attacks them through regulatory complaints, strategic disinformation, and market manipulation until the stock price collapses. Then he swoops in with a rescue offer at a fraction of the company's real value." James studied the documents, his face growing pale. This is criminal." "Yes, it is. And you're his next target." Eleanor showed him intercepted emails between Victor and his associates. "They're planning to plant a story about safety concerns with your battery technology. Anonymous regulatory complaints are already being filed. Within 6 months, your company will be fighting for survival on multiple fronts." "Why are you telling me this?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena met his eyes. "Because I'm tired of watching my husband destroy good people for sport, and because I need your help to stop him." Over the next 2 hours, Elena outlined her plan. James would continue developing his technology, while secretly documenting every attempt at sabotage. His company would serve as the perfect case study of Victor's illegal practices, a real-time example of corporate predation that Marcus could present to federal investigators. "There's something else," Elena added. "Your battery technology. How close are you to a major breakthrough?" James hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "We're about to announce a partnership with 3 major automakers. The contracts are worth nearly $2 billion over 5 years. It would make us one of the most valuable private tech companies in the sector." Elena felt a cold satisfaction. Victor had no idea what he was trying to destroy. His greed had led him to target not just any company, but one on the verge of massive success. "When will you announce the partnership?" she asked. "The Castellano Holdings shareholder meeting is in 6 weeks, James said. "We were planning to go public the day after, once the market opened. Perfect timing to avoid any conflicts with major investors." Eleanor smiled, the first genuine smile she'd felt in months. "James, I think we need to adjust that timeline." As she left his office, Eleanor felt the pieces of her revenge falling into place with mathematical precision. Victor had spent years underestimating her, treating her like a decorative object incapable of complex thought. That blindness would be his downfall. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rosa. "Sparring session tomorrow. You ready to hit back?" Eleanor typed her response as she walked toward her car. "I've been ready for years." The woman who'd entered that boardroom months ago, broken, ashamed, invisible, no longer existed. In her place was someone Victor had created through his cruelty but would never recognize, an opponent worthy of his fear. The war was almost over, and Victor Castellano had no idea he'd already lost. Part 5. The Phoenix Rises. The Castellano Holdings annual shareholder meeting was held in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, the same venue where Eleanor had endured countless humiliations. Today, the room buzzed with anticipation as investors, board members, and financial journalists gathered to hear Victor present his vision for the company's future. Elena stood at the back of the room, unrecognizable from the woman who'd once cowered in these spaces. 6 months of training with Rosa had transformed her body into something lean and powerful. Her tailored crimson dress, a color she'd never dared wear before, fit perfectly, emphasizing strength rather than hiding weakness. But the most dramatic change was in her eyes. Where once there had been uncertainty, now there was the cold focus of a predator. Victor took the stage with his characteristic confidence, his smile sharp as broken glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what I believe will be a historic day for Castellano Holdings." Elena watched from the shadows as her husband began his presentation, outlining aggressive expansion plans and several pending acquisitions. He was, in his element, commanding the room's attention with the easy authority of someone who'd never been truly challenged. "Our latest target represents the future of energy storage technology," Victor continued, clicking to a slide showing Pinnacle Dynamics logo. "While the current management has shown promise, they lack the vision and resources necessary to scale their innovations globally." Elena felt a surge of anger at his casual dismissal of James Chen's brilliance, but she remained motionless. Patience was another lesson Rosa had taught her. Victor was 20 minutes into his presentation when the first disruption occurred. Marcus Reeves entered through the main doors, flanked by 2 federal agents and a representative from the Securities and Exchange Commission. "Victor Castellano," the lead agent announced, his voice cutting through the murmur of confused voices. "You're under arrest for securities fraud, market manipulation, and conspiracy." The room erupted into chaos. Shareholders stood, journalists began filming, and board members frantically whispered among themselves. Victor's face went white, then flushed with rage. "This is absurd," he declared, his voice booming over the noise. "I demand to see warrants, to speak with my attorney." "We have warrants," the SEC representative said calmly, holding up official documents. "We also have comprehensive evidence of your illegal activities, provided by a confidential informant with access to your private records." Elena chose that moment to step forward, her movement drawing every eye in the room. The sea of faces turned toward her, some recognizing her, others confused by her presence. She walked with the measured pace Rosa had taught her, each step deliberate and controlled. "Hello, Victor," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence. Victor stared at her as if seeing a ghost. The woman approaching him bore little resemblance to the wife he'd left at home that morning. This person radiated confidence and barely contained power. "Elena?" His voice cracked slightly. "What are you doing here?" "I'm the confidential informant," she said simply. The revelation sent another shock through the room. Eleanor could see Victor's mind racing, trying to process how his invisible, incompetent wife could have orchestrated his downfall. "That's impossible," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You don't know anything about my business." Eleanor pulled out her phone, connecting it to the room's audio system with practiced ease. "I know about the Cayman Islands accounts. I know about the planted regulatory complaints against Pinnacle Dynamics. I know about the bribes to foreign officials for the Singapore shipping contracts." With each revelation, Victor's face grew paler. The evidence she'd been gathering for months played out on the room's screens: financial records, recorded phone calls, documented patterns of corporate sabotage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena addressed the room directly, her voice steady and clear, "for 3 years I watched my husband destroy good people for profit. Companies like Pinnacle Dynamics, whose only crime was being successful enough to threaten his monopoly." She clicked to the final slide. James Chen's announcement of his major automotive partnerships, timed perfectly to demonstrate the true value of what Victor had tried to steal.